Yo, 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 what is up, everybody? Popo here, bringing guys a new video, and today we're going to talk about reading the meta. Let's go. Welcome, everybody, and today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to read the data. We're going to look at all this data. We're going to talk about how you can use this to actually figure out the meta, how you can build your own team and stuff like that using this information. And a great source for this, and the one that we're going to be using, is actually Labmaus. If you have not checked out Labmaus, please do so. The link will be down below, and this is a great site, especially if you're going to be going to any official tournaments. You're definitely going to want to check this site out. It's going to help you build your team and be more successful in building your team. You can see what's really popular, what people are using, what's winning, and you'll be able to create your team based off of that rather than just going in and hoping for the best. So more information you have, the better always, and this site has all of the information, and it is absolutely fantastic. So let's get right into it, though. So recently there was a regional over in Brazil, and we got some results from that, but today we're going to be looking at the top teams page. So this is a page that will show you all of the top performing teams recently, and you can put that by a certain amount of dates. So this one is actually by default sent from the first of the month, so we're kind of seeing that, and we see that there is this Raging Bolt balanced, Chen Pao team that is doing extremely well. We see the Urshifu Water climbing back up from the shadow of the Dark Urshifu, and now he is chilling at top, but we see he's not far off. And we see down here a Volcarona team that did really well in that regional that had just passed. And yeah, so there's no real surprises here. If you sort it by this, you can see this is a very specific team that was just run at that regional and the Samurott Tour. So it's hard to kind of read whether or not this team will be really good or not. So be wary of that. And then we see like a Dondozo team here that has performed pretty well since the beginning of the month in some of these online tours and finished 179th. Going 5-4 at the regional a couple weeks ago. So some of the information when you're doing short term is not going to be super accurate. What I like to do, though, is that we like to go like a month ahead. So I'll go 19th and we'll go to the 15th, and we can apply those filters, and you will see that there is going to be a lot more games played. So you'll see here so many more games, and then we can filter by this win percentage here, and we can get a more accurate depiction of how good some of these teams are, right? 125 out of 53, like that's really good. And if we want to go even further back, you can go all the way back to January, kind of when all of this had kicked off, and we can kind of see what team is performing well since then. And we can see here a 76 win percentage for this team here. You can click on it. But recently at the Liverpool region was the last time it was ran in an official event with these Pokemon, so it might be the time to bring it back, I don't let too much credence into the point system. Point system's fine. It's kind of arbitrary. Doesn't really mean anything. Record and win percentages are what's more important. And if we do check that win percentages for the high usage teams, we do see that this team is one of the best here. Has a lot of play. It has the arbitrary score, like that's insane, like nobody's even close. Win percentage is pretty good. I mean, it's not the top of the board, but usage and record it is. But this team hasn't really been used that recently. It got a 5th place finish a bunch of times at a bunch of regionals, but it hasn't really been used recently. So we could see a resurgence of this team coming in, with a very specific team that has been going around recently that you guys might already know. So let's go back to that 19th to the 15th, and we'll be able to see a more accurate picture of the last month. That's kind of what you want to look at when you're going into one of these regionals, especially the one that's coming up in a couple of weeks, Vancouver, the snow team, right? We see that this team has been performing very well despite being a very known team now. It is placing very high in a lot of these online tours and just doing really well in general on ladder. So a lot of people are using this team and figuring out it is very good. And that's something that we're going to talk about too, is why is this team so good, right? So we could see here, of course, it got first place, and then, you know, it kind of took off. The creator of this team put out all the information, so therefore it was readily available for everybody. Now people are fine-tuning it, tweaking it, and kind of keeping the composition same. There are some different compositions of this team that include Incineroar or something like that. So they are changing it. It is varied, but you're definitely going to want to have something for this. And though it's down here more on the meta with 68 win percentage, which is insane. It's like the highest up here. You're definitely going to want something for it, right? It's so good. It's so good. So make sure you have something for that. This is the standard team. This is like a more of a balanced team we're seeing. And it's just using that Chien-Pao with the 2 support Pokemon, being able to switch in and out and also do damage. And then you're finishing games with like a bulky Raging Bolt that can't really be stopped. So, yeah, we're seeing a lot of that same team. You see a lot of Ogerpon Wellspring, so you're going to need something for that. So going more in depth on that, you want to go to all tournaments up here, and then you can kind of go for official. You can look at some of these online tours, though. Some of them aren't a great representation. They might be smaller, so, you know, more niche teams might do better in these smaller tournaments, as there's less rounds and stuff. And you just want to check out the more recent ones, especially the ones in March here. And you just kind of want to go through these here. You want to go through the usage stats, kind of see how the Pokemon are performing with their win rates. We can see Fluttermane has not been doing well. Under 50% win rate, it's kind of meh. That means there's a lot of stuff right now that's able to beat the Fluttermane. Despite Fluttermane being the highest usage, it's not having that 50%. 50% is decent. That means the Pokemon is performing as expected. It's either winning or it's not winning. It doesn't give a clear matchup advantage, but it is a good Pokemon. And if it's over 50% win percentage, as you can see 54 here, that is a good Pokemon. That means that Pokemon is performing better than expected, and it is giving you a positive matchup into a lot of things. So you want to kind of take that information and use that to your advantage. Right now, Tailwind's not that great, so 46 win percentage Tornadus kind of isn't giving you any extra benefits, and it's actually a detriment compared to what's already in the meta, which is that Raging Bolt, taking that 4% essentially and adding to that. So if you get matched up against Raging Bolt, there's a 4% differential, which ends up being an 8% differential that you have a chance to lose. So there's an 8% more chance that you lose to Raging Bolts than you do to Tornadus. So if you look at it that way, it's kind of a weird arbitrary thing, but the data shows that, right? So Raging Bolts are doing better than Tornadus by a factor of 8%. So same with Chien-Paos, Amoonguses are dropping down. So you kind of want to look at this and be like, okay, maybe I don't want to bring Goldangos because there's a lot of things dealing with Goldangos right now. So it might not be the best Pokemon to bring. Gouging Fires are doing pretty okay, so maybe I want a Gouging Fire on my team, and then you can start building your team off of those kind of assumptions. And having 50% Pokemon on your team is pretty decent. You could also just bring the top 6 here. This top 6 would actually be pretty decent and not bad at all. If we go back to the tournaments and we look at the most recent one, I keep forgetting to hit that. And we could see the Fluttermane continuing to be a negative with only 48% with a 60% usage. So definitely a detriment. We see a 57 win percentage for Raging Bolts, which is huge. That means it is getting tons of wins. Rillaboom, Incineroar, same thing. Huge win percentages. Rillaboom actually, Incineroar falling down to 32 is kind of crazy. Tornadus coming back up to that 50, so Tailwind being a little bit better in this tournament could be an indication that maybe it will be better for you. We see that the Urshifu Rapid Strike is actually increasing over the Urshifu Single Strike in win percentage. Landorus continuing to be really good too, and Chien-Pao. So, once again, Chien-Pao, just looking at this data here, we can see Chien-Pao, Landorus, Urshifu, right? Incineroar, Rillaboom, Raging Bolt, right? So if you just made your team Raging Bolt, Rillaboom, Incineroar, Urshifu, Rapid Strike, Landorus, Incarnate, and Chien-Pao. Okay? Well, let's go back to top teams. You see how that works? You see how that works? So we can start seeing that this makes sense. So you need to try to find those little things that are hidden in the data points that you can go, okay, well, you know what? Those Pokemon together are very, very good. So maybe I need something that can deal with this and just play this matchup, right? It doesn't matter about the EVs on the Pokemon. As long as you're putting EVs and making them believable and you're doing battles against those, you're going to have matchup experience. And matchup experience is way more important than the EV spreads and the calculations and stuff like that. Though I don't want to say that they're not important, but matchup and be able to know what to do in those matchups and how to position yourself and how to play the game effectively is going to give you a much, much better win against those Pokemon than it would be if you just had the specific EVs and we're just doing damage calcs. Because damage calc is all theoretical. We see crits, we see, you know, different situations. There's switches, there's all kinds of things. So damage calcs come down to, okay, 1v1, here we go, this is what it is. Whereas matchup experience gives you, okay, here's the outline of this matchup. And that's kind of what you want to do when you're building your team, right? So when we start to look at our team, now let's look, right? So this team did really, really well. And what is helping it do really, really well, right? It has matchups. It has good matchups. It has something, let's look at this, the second team that's going, right? It has the Fluttermane. What do we have for Fluttermane, right? We have a faster Pokemon than Fluttermane. Tailwind is really down right now. So, you know, a Choice Scarf Pokemon like the Rapid Strike Urshifu is going to outspeed a lot of things in the meta. And it's going to do a ton of damage to those things. And so that straight there beats that. And it also beats Incineroar. And it also beats the Landorus. So one Pokemon can deal with 3 Pokemon. This is, of course, theoretical. When you're playing these matchups, it's going to change, right? But then you say, okay, well, it has the Ogerpon, and the Ogerpon beats that, right? But then you look back at the team. Ogerpon also loses to the Raging Bolt. It also loses to the Landorus if it doesn't Terra. It also loses to the Rillaboom if it does Terra. So the Rillaboom is protecting your other 2 Pokemon, which are the Incineroar, which can intimidate it, and that is effective as well. And it's protecting your Urshifu Rapid Strike by putting a lot of pressure on that Pokemon, right? And so you can kind of see these little things. This team is very similar to this team, except this team has a little bit more aggression. So it has a little bit more clear path to that win condition. So you want to make sure when you're building your team that you have those clear paths to win conditions. You want to make sure that it is obvious on what you're trying to do to yourself. Maybe not to your opponent, but to yourself. This team has a couple of ways it can take advantage and win the game, right? If the opponent has a very physically defensive, you know, intimidate heavy team, you can go with your special attackers on this team, right? You can go try to win with these 2 here, with the Raging Bolt and the Landorus. And if they have a very like special base team, because they're trying to deal with stuff like the Raging Bolt, then you get to win with like Chien-Pao plus Urshifu, right? So there's a lot of options here. And if we could see down here, all the way down to the 4th team is the first team with Tailwind. And then even after that, it's, you know, still not prevalent. And then we see it again. So these teams aren't using Tailwind. And that means that you having a Choice Scarf Pokemon and a really fast Pokemon and a couple of priority moves are going to give you an advantage over those slower teams. And you want to use that to your advantage fully. You know, like the Arcanine kind of goes down to a lot of these Pokemon, right? The Urshifu outspeeds it. You know, you have the Landorus that outspeeds it. It can just output a lot of damage onto all those Pokemon. And then you see, like, you know, you get the Articuno, of course. But Articuno gets pressured by Incineroar. It doesn't really do much to Incineroar, especially if you're using a Assault Vest or you're really especially bulky. Then you can kind of sit there. If you get a Snarl off and actually hit it, then you're doing pretty good. If you can just get rid of the Ninetales early on, then you're able to do a lot. And with Chien-Pao and like Urshifu, you can put a lot of pressure onto a lot of these Pokemon, even if they have Protect. So it has a decent, I wouldn't say a good matchup, but this team has a decent matchup into this as well. So that's why this team is number 1. This is why this team is performing right now, because it just is good into the matchup. just like in that one tournament. This was so good into all of the stuff that was being brought at the time. You know, it was a super hyper aggressive team against teams that were more passive and just sitting back. And now, like, this team is more of a passive team, right? It has a couple of points of aggression, but overall, this is a more passive version of this team up here, where you're just aggressive, or you can bring it back and be a little bit more passive, where this one is mostly passive and then you can come out and be aggressive. So this team was just full aggression all the time. Everything was aggressive. And then you got teams like this where it's pretty aggressive. This is a really aggressive team. Then you get teams like this. This is a passive team that has points of aggression. So we could see those points of aggression teams performing really well now. Be able to stop your opponent's outburst of attacks, and then be able to put your own later on in the game, or surprise your opponent by going fully out attacking at the beginning of the game and be able to control the end game is really, really big right now. So you got to make sure when you're building your team that you're building around those concepts, right? You want to have aggression, you want to have a little bit of defensive work, or you want to just be full aggressive. Those are the teams that seem to be working right now. These slower trick room kind of passive teams kind of aren't really performing. We did see that there was a trick room size spam team that did really well in the last regional, but I think that was just a 1 out of a million kind of case. And as you could see, like down here, where's trick room, right? Like here's like, I guess this is trick room, but this is like fast bear, right? This is fast bear. This is more of a trick room based bear, though it does have fast mode. Like, where's the first trick room team? And that's this one. And this is the one that performed well at the tournament. And, you know, it hasn't really done anything before that. So it's a kind of first case that this team is good. Does that mean it's bad? No, absolutely not. This team might be extremely good. It just doesn't have the playtime out there yet. So you got to make sure that you're able to take care of that team too. It does have, you know, the Torkoal that's able to deal with the sun and can deal with this team a little bit better than maybe some of the other stuff. And that's another thing. If you can get rid of everything and just leave the snow and you have Torkoal in the back, you just win the game. So keep that in mind too. But yeah, that's kind of how you can read the data and kind of start building your team and defining the meta and just figuring it out on your own. So yeah, I hope this video helped you guys build your team. And if it did, make sure you guys thumbs it up. If you're not subscribed, make sure you do so. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye, everybody.